A great, old-school turn-based RPG with a modern execution. That's the initial pitch that allowed Divinity Original Sin to succeed on Kickstarter back in 2013. Certainly, Original Sin manages to invoke many of those feelings, and although it is sometimes a little rough around the edges, Divinity Original Sin succeeds wholeheartedly in establishing a classic RPG that doesn't feel old. Pet Pal may just be the best talent I've ever picked up in an RPG. Here, I am witnessing the results of a quest that led me to assist a cat in his romantic pursuits. In Divinity Original Sin, you play as Source Hunters, part of an order with the authority to dispense justice as you hunt for a dark and dangerous magic called Source, practiced by mages called Sorcerers. And these puns alone should give away the sense of personality and humor contained within Divinity Original Sin. In typical RPG fashion, this premise remains just that though, a premise. Your initial mission starts out relatively tame as you hunt for clues and try to solve a murder mystery, but quickly turns into a story filled with mighty, universe-threatening forces. Although the end goal is far from unique, in between the looming end-of-the-world scenarios lie many curious side quests and events, such as a rather depressed troll who can't quite find the motivation to club your head in should you refuse to pay his toll, an encounter with the one and only Red King, or even returning a stranded sentient shell back to sea. The world is very clearly meticulously filled with entertaining elements and is a real strong suit of Original Sin. Although the world may appear open at first glance, you'll quickly find out that this is not quite the case. Freedom often describes Original Sin well, but the path you take throughout the game is mostly a fixed one, with your main and often only real indication being the level of your enemies. Again though, freedom is most definitely a highlight of the game. You're obviously allowed to walk into zones that you are not at all ready for, and can pick up and follow quests which are clearly far too daunting for you at that moment. You can start fights with guards, lob a fireball in any direction and can kill virtually any NPC you encounter, or you can wear a bucket as a helmet. This is a game that highly promotes interacting with the environment in whatever way you wish. Say, an NPC asks you to kill a certain individual, you can go along with his wishes or make a deal with his target. Maybe get the first NPC arrested by pickpocketing evidence off of him, or simply kill him instead. Similarly, you can go around looting every house and room you find, or use a mage's teleportation abilities to get past barriers blocking your way. This level of player freedom continues to play a big role in Divinity Original Sin's excellent combat mechanics. Throughout the world you'll find enemies stationed on predetermined locations, there are no random encounters, and for the most part the result of this is that every fight contains a different set of enemies in an entirely different location, making each battle interesting and potentially dangerous. This danger can partially be negated by intelligent use of the environment, and is one of the most satisfying aspects of Original Sin. Almost every item can be moved and picked up. Needless to say, this offers a lot of opportunities when you happen to have some barrels of oil lying around and a character with a tendency to start fires. When one of your characters enters combat, he or she goes into a turn-based battle. Although it is turn-based, combat rarely slows down as there are no resources such as mana, and instead combat is entirely focused on cooldowns and available action points. Controlling the battlefield is often the most important aspect of the entire fight. Extinguishing a field of fire with a rain spell will prevent your warrior from getting burnt, sure, but standing in the newly created puddle when your enemy is packed with lightning spells is quick to turn your watery defenses against you. Clever use of these environmental effects are highly enjoyable and often key to victory, be it simply throwing a candle onto an oily surface or turning the weather in your favor before fighting a bunch of fire elementals. Additionally, the party mechanics involved serve the game very well and offer a lot of opportunities for interesting combinations, such as a mage creating a pool of ooze, followed by your ranger shooting a fire arrow onto said pool of ooze, causing a lovely explosion that shatters the skeletal warriors around you. Combat is one of the strongest parts of Divinity Original Sin. Now again, in Original Sin you play as Source Hunters, plural, as the game revolves around two main characters instead of one, a point that is heavily emphasized in the story and gameplay mechanics, and this gimmick serves the game well. Playing through the game on your own, you'll have control over both of the main characters. You have the option of setting up each character with either a random or loyal AI at the character creation screen, which decides their input in dialogue. Alternatively, playing with no AI forces you to play out both of their dialogue choices, or you could turn off dual dialogue completely, which does result in missing a lot of the interesting discussions. Divinity Original Sin can also be played in co-op, in which case the two characters will be divided among both players. Each player can freely move around, though traveling to a new map does require the party to be together. Just like single player, you'll have moments within the dialogue where both players will have to choose their stance on a particular issue. Sadly, nothing that actually impacts the game greatly, but it does offer roleplay opportunities. Co-op largely works excellently. Being able to do shopping on the other side of the town while your buddy is inquiring about a stolen staff with some of the locals simply goes to show that co-op has almost no limitations. But there is one big annoyance that could potentially make co-op significantly less attractive for a lot of players. The first player that comes within range or clicks on an NPC will enter dialogue, and this dialogue window isn't shown for the second player, forcing him or her to follow the conversation by looking at the far too rapidly disappearing speech bubbles, or within the combat log, which gets filled with banter from other NPCs. Alternatively, he or she could open the journal, filling the screen with yet another menu that could result in the second player missing out on, say, characters teleporting away or other such events that require your attention to be on anything but the journal. Not a huge hindrance, but annoying nevertheless. More bothersome, however, is that conversations often lead up to moral choices where both players have to give their input. As the second player never technically entered dialogue, he or she is then suddenly pulled into a dialogue window which lacks all form of context. This basically forces a situation where the first player has to explain what the last couple of sentences were and why you're even having a debate in the first place. It's an odd flaw for a game that otherwise has an excellent co-op system and emphasizes a lot on this possibility. Certainly it doesn't ruin the co-op, but it makes it oddly clunkier than single player. In addition to the first two main characters, you also have the option of expanding your party up to a team of 4. Very early into the story, you'll encounter 2 potential party members. Unfortunately, these are the only 2 with an actual background, but you do get access to generic henchmen if you aren't satisfied with the 2 more fleshed out characters. These 2 characters are a warrior and mage respectively, though the way skills and attributes work is mostly up to you. At character creation you can pick between a few predetermined class templates, but this has no actual impact on how your character develops afterwards, giving you full control over whether or not you want your main character to pick up some fire or lightning spells. You could easily turn a character focused purely on warrior skills into a battle mage within but a few levels. Though you should not pick carelessly, as the option to change any spent points comes rather late into the game. And with late, I certainly do mean late, as there is a great deal of content available. In the end, it is simply difficult to find any overwhelming issues. Original Sin is a game that gives you a lot of room and allows you to solve its odd encounters in numerous creative ways. Every new area has the potential of putting you in yet another highly amusing event, and wandering around the colorful world of Rivellon is certain to be entertaining. Create a poisonous cloud and teleport an enemy directly into it, talk to a chicken and then feel bad for killing said chicken, steal a pumpkin and craft a helmet out of it. There's more than enough to do, and it all remains highly enjoyable. There are definitely a lot of tiny annoyances though. For newer players, the game is very poor at hinting as to where to go, the main story isn't immensely interesting, more companions with more input would be great, loot is generally not that exciting, especially for your mages, and managing your inventory across a group of 4 can be a hassle, but these are all just tiny issues in what is otherwise a fantastic RPG that allows you to interact with a highly engaging world in creative and clever ways. It is a game that shows you a pile of treasure on top of a mountain, but never tells you how to climb it, leaving it up to you to solve your greed your own way. Divinity Original Sin gets a 9 out of 10.